Alright, so yes, the first part of Surah Naml was that we can't appreciate something until we have acceptance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and once we have acceptance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our lives, then we can truly appreciate what we've been given, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will add on even more. So we went through the story of at least 4 different prophets, as well as some non-believers that turned into Muslims, and all of them became advantageous by listening to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or avoided a punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by listening to him. And that was the first topic of the surah. The second topic of the surah now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the disbelievers after having all of these stories and asks them if they can produce basically any evidence to the contrary of God. Can they show that God doesn't exist? Can they explain all the stuff that happens around them in their environment to something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And this is probably the longest Quran recitation we'll be listening to for quite some time. Actually, probably the longest Quran recitation during this, the whole time we've had these discussions. But it's a very beautiful recitation. And afterwards, we will do our usual analysis and Tadabbur, inshallah.
قل الحمد لله وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى الله خير أما يشركون أمن خلق السماوات والأرض وأنزل لكم من السماء ماء فأنبتنا به حدائق ذات بهجة ما كان لكم أن تنبتوا شجرها أإله مع الله بل هم قوم يعدلون أمن جعل الأرض قرارا وجعل خلالها أنهارا وجعل لها رواسي وجعل بين البحرين حاجزا أإله مع الله بل أكثرهم لا يعلمون أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء ويجعلكم خلفاء الأرض أإله مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون أمن يهديكم في ظلمات البر والبحر ومن يرسل الرياح بشرا بين يدي رحمته أإله مع الله تعالى الله عما يشركون أمن يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده ومن يرزقكم من السماء والأرض أإله مع الله قل هاتوا برهانكم إن كنتم صادقين قل هاتوا برهانكم إن كنتم صادقين قل لا يعلم من في السماوات والأرض الغيب إلا الله وما يشعرون أيان يبعثون بل ادارك علمهم في الآخرة بل هم في شك منها بل هم منها عمون.
Say, praise be to God and peace on the servants he has chosen. Who is better, God or those they set up as partners with him? Who created the heavens and earth? Who sends down water from the sky for you, with which we cause gardens of delight to grow? You have no power to make the trees grow in them. Is it another God besides God? No, but they are people who take others to be equal with God. Who is it that made the earth a stable place to live? Who made rivers flow through it? Who set immovable mountains on it and created a barrier between the fresh and salt water? Is it another God beside God? No, but most of them do not know. Who is it that answers the distressed when they call upon him? Who removes their suffering? Who makes you successors in the earth? Is it another God beside God? Little notice you take. Who is it that guides you through the darkness on land and sea? Who sends the winds as heralds of good news before his mercy? Is it another God beside God? God is far above the partners they put beside him. Who is it that creates life and reproduces it? Who is it that gives you provision from the heavens and earth? Is it another God beside God? Say, show me your evidence then, if what you say is true. Say, no one in the heavens or on earth knows the unseen except God. They do not know when they will be raised from the dead. Their knowledge cannot comprehend the hereafter. They are in doubt about it. They are blind to it. And in a nutshell, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now asking the disbelievers after everything that he shows them in the first half or a little bit over half of Surah Naml. He shows them all the stories of the four prophets beforehand. He shows them what can happen when they don't accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and also the blessings they can get. And now he starts enumerating the blessings that they already have that they don't even acknowledge. Who sends the rains down? Who allows trees to grow in the gardens they have planted? Is there another person besides that? Is there another being besides that? Is there another creation besides that that can do all these things? Who made rivers flow through it? Who made mountains on earth, etc.? He starts listing all of the benefits that they get, that they enjoy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though they're disrespectful to him, they don't acknowledge him, they don't even pray to him, but he still enumerates them because at the end of the day, he created them for mankind and they are his blessings. And of course, one of the best ayats in the Quran that I personally think and one that really resonates with me is verse 62 when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks, who is it that answers the distressed when they call upon him? Who removes their suffering? Which is, of course, a very beautiful ayat that's repeated multiple, or the idea is repeated multiple times in the Quran. But it's so true. I mean, there's another part of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls out the hypocrites who when they go on a ship and there's a storm, they start to call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they pray to him like, oh God, save us from this storm on the ship. It's kind of ironic that when someone is in like a very stressful situation, they immediately call upon God. That's the fitra, right? That you automatically go there. If you're with an atheist on a plane, the plane has extreme turbulence. I'm sure they're gonna start muttering, "Oh God" or something like that. Just it's funny, but it's kind of sad they don't even acknowledge the being that created them and will get them out safely. Even then, when you have struggles and you have no one to turn to, you at least have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you can turn to, who wants you to turn to him and will reward you by removing the suffering that you're stricken with. Then the final two verses before we end is basically a commandment to all Muslims, although he's also speaking to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to say, no one in the heavens or on earth knows the unseen except God, which means basically no humans know, of course, what's going to happen in the future, what will happen to them, but no other being in any creation, whether the angels up in heaven, jinn floating around, who knows where, know anything about the unseen except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's in command of the entire thing. And very tellingly, he speaks to the disbelievers in verse 66, their knowledge cannot comprehend the hereafter. Meaning, what? That all the blessings that he's just listed out, perhaps the disbelievers might say, oh yeah, we can explain such and such. This is how I'm reading it. They can explain such and such. They can understand everything. Oh, the rain comes down because that's part of the water cycle. Trees grow because that's where they're supposed to grow, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, when all hope is lost, their minds will not be able to comprehend how the hereafter exists or what makes the hereafter, etc. And there, it reflects the another ayat from the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Jannah, and he says it's some place that no eye has ever seen and no mind can ever dream of. So the last interesting thing that I wanted to point out was actually how Bridges' translation translates this part. Instead of saying their knowledge cannot comprehend thereafter, it goes their knowledge has been reached in the hereafter, as in and I like the footnote because the different qira'at, of course, have different ways of reciting the same verses. And the Quran was revealed in 7 qira'at. But side note aside, I like this phrasing of the translation because it's like they can interpret however they want the physical signs of the world that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already listed before them, but no matter what, they will never be able to comprehend how the hereafter will be. And that's about it for the Tadabbur of this part, I think, since it was a long Quran recitation this time and very emotional. I'll open the floor to anyone who would like to add anything. Alright, well, there doesn't seem to be any questions or comments, so Jazakallah khair to everyone today. The recordings will be posted later, as always, inshallah, although I forgot to start recording until later, so it might be a little bit jarring, but who cares? And yeah, inshallah, we'll have this again next week. Alright, Assalamu alaikum, everyone.